LEGO isn't perfect, and sometimes LEGO makes mistakes. Here are 100 LEGO sets that break the rules in one way or another. Kicking things off, a viewer by the name of Spencer spotted a pretty wild rendering error in the new Avengers Endgame Final Battle set. If you head over to the product page on LEGO's official website, you'll see what looks to be a pretty standard action-packed scene. But look a little bit closer at Iron Man and things start to fall apart, literally. A transparent piece phases straight through Tony Stark's hand, making for a very awkward-looking connection. Now, unless this is some kind of hidden feature of the Mark 85 armor, this is clearly a mistake in the digital render. Either his hand or the handle need to be rotated to correct this mistake. As many of you know, LEGO doesn't tend to use real photography on their box art and product images anymore. Instead, they just use renders. These hyper-realistic 3D renders are faster and cheaper to make, but sometimes details slip through the cracks, like the infamous Gorilla Legend Beast set from LEGO Chima. As you can see in this image, the gorilla's arm is not correctly connected to the socket joint. LEGO later corrected this released image when they finalized the box design, as you can see here. Now, moving from render mistakes to instruction mistakes, a viewer named Logan was building the Ferrari F40 supercar, set number 76934, when they ran into not one, but two errors in the instruction booklet. The first one shows up in step 92. The inventory list tells you to grab one transparent red round tile and one orange round tile, but the visual shows you placing two of each. So unless you're stockpiling parts for later steps, something's clearly off here. But it gets even more confusing later on in the build when you reach the wheels. The instructions say to repeat the step 4 times, because, of course, a car needs 4 wheels, but the parts callout only includes 1 tire, 1 wheel, and, interestingly enough, 4 hubcaps. Now, unless you're planning to build a Ferrari unicycle, this won't get you very far. The correct callout should be 4 of all of these items, but somehow only 1 tire and wheel made it into this step. Speaking of confusing instructions, a viewer named Carlos ran into a bit of a roadblock while building the Super Mario Kart Yoshi's Bike set released this year in 2025. Everything starts off fine. You're told to open bag 2 and begin building. All good. But a few steps later, the instructions tell you to open bag 2 again. Unless Carlos stumbled into a LEGO time loop, this is clearly a mistake. You're only given 1 bag 2. So unless it regenerates like an item box in Mario Kart, I can definitely see builders being pretty confused here. Taking a peek at the Marvel Universe, a fan named Muhammad pointed out something missing in the Hulkbuster Smash set. Just look at this picture, or this one, or how about this one? Spotted what's wrong? Well, check out this promo image for comparison. As we all know, Iron Man is red and gold. It's kind of his thing. However, this iconic visor seems to be missing its golden color on every single image of these instructions. Although this won't affect your set building experience, this error certainly looks weird and appears multiple times. On the subject of comics though, Marvel isn't the only series that LEGO has rights to. A viewer going by SLSB pointed out an error in the instructions for the LEGO Batman movie set from the Dimensions line. While putting together the Robin minifigure, the instructions call for a jagged-edged cape instead of Robin's traditional flat yellow cape. This set does though include one of these capes, however it's supposed to go on Batgirl. Since this set is slightly older and retired, it was surprising to see that LEGO has actually went back to update the original digital instructions online to fix this issue. I mean, LEGO's digital instructions should always have the most up-to-date corrections, right? Well, no. Sometimes it's the complete opposite. Looking at the physical paper instructions for the Slave One Microfighter set, everything is fine with Boba Fett's helmet. However, what about the digital instructions? Well, that's a completely different issue. You see, in multiple steps here, the piece for Boba Fett's helmet is misprinted. It's clearly an issue with the digital file that LEGO used, since this same exact mistake appears in at least 3 different places in this instruction booklet. Shout out to Dolly Broccoli for pointing this one out. It's quite unique. But one of the weirder errors in today's video comes from Barkman over on Reddit, who posted images from the Frozen Peaks Minecraft set. This set appears to show Steve in the long dreamt of but never released emerald armor. While this is likely supposed to be representing leather armor that's been dyed green, the green leather armor in-game is a much darker shade of green, certainly nowhere as bright as this LEGO armor. Minecraft players have been asking for emerald armor for years, but still no luck. Sadly, this might be the closest we'll ever get. Perhaps this LEGO Steve is just using mods. Now, City is one of LEGO's oldest and most popular themes. With more than 50 city sets released in just 2023 alone, there are a lot of potential places for mistakes to occur. But it looks like errors in instructions go back quite some time, specifically for LEGO City. Just check out the police boat set from 2006, specifically the minifigures, and even more specifically the minifigures' gloves. On the box, the boat captain is wearing gloves, while the helicopter pilot is not. You can see that he has yellow hands. But when you open up the instructions though, we're greeted with some different images. We see that the two have actually swapped outfits, as the pilot has gray gloves on, and the boat captain now has yellow hands. So which one is right? Thanks to George for pointing this error out to me. But continuing with LEGO's original themes, Hidden Side I think was a criminally underrated theme from a few years back. Inspired by the American city of New Orleans, this theme combined both fantasy and the real world in a really fun way. However, one thing from this theme that LEGO probably wishes would stay hidden is the instruction booklet cover art for the Ghost Train Express set. As fan Spike is Cool pointed out, the minifigure on the instructions contains an error. Way down at the bottom right corner, you can see this minifigure holding a lantern. Nothing wrong with that, but wait, why does this piece that should be inside of the lantern seem to be escaping? And also, it looks a bit too small. What's even more weird though is that the box art and promotional images for this set seem to be the exact same picture. However, in both of them, the piece is properly placed. Clearly, someone noticed this at some point, but I guess the instructions had already been printed and it wasn't worth trying to fix them. Mistakes like this aren't anything new though. In fact, a viewer named Eris sent in these images of the Crocodile Cage set that was released all the way back in 1994. The set itself is pretty basic, with only 59 pieces and 2 minifigures. With that small of a build, you'd think that everything would be very easy to accurately draw up. Well, prepare to be surprised, because take a look at the cover and you can see that the captured pirate has a mustache here. However, on the very last page of the instructions, he seems to have shaved it off. He doesn't have a mustache anymore. I guess prison really does change a man. Now, this one is a bit different though from some of the other mistakes we've looked at, because while many of the new errors are the result of a computer misclick or dropping an image in the wrong place, these old instructions were all actually hand-drawn based on images of the sets, meaning that someone simply just forgot to draw the pirate's mustache here. Taking a trip to a galaxy far, far away, there are surprisingly a lot of errors to be found in LEGO Star Wars sets. As one of LEGO's most successful themes ever, it seems like the company sometimes puts these out a little too fast. For example, you probably know that LEGO makes a lot of troopers. Stormtroopers, snow troopers, clone troopers, and the list goes on and on. With all of these unique prints to keep sorted, it's only a matter of time before some user error shows up and the wrong print appears in the wrong set, and that seems to be happening quite a lot. Never Say Gaming pointed out this error in the Hoth Rebel base set. Near the end, the K-3PO droid figure has the wrong torso. It seems to be showing a shock trooper instead. This is weird for 2 reasons. Number 1, shock troopers didn't even come in this set at all. And number 2, by the events of the attack on Hoth, shock troopers would no longer be around, as they were all from the Clone Wars era. But wait, there's more. Speaking of shock troopers, they're actually the victim of a small mistake in the instructions of the police gunship set. This set includes 2 of these figures, but something is wrong. The box here shows the 2 shock troopers as they're supposed to appear, and even the early instructions show them properly. However, near the very end of the booklet, we see this image. Those are clearly 2 different trooper torsos. The one on the left seems to be a weird glitched version that extends to the minifigure legs. I honestly have no clue what happened, because this is such an odd looking error, but that's not the end for Star Wars troopers. You see, the Imperial Star Destroyer set that was released in 2014 certainly isn't built to minifigure scale, but it did come with 6 minifigures that you could place around the ship's interior, including 2 standard stormtroopers. However, Joshua pointed out to me that there's something strange about one of these figures. This is the figure that's on the box and included in the set. However, the instructions call for this figure to be placed. Once again, we've got another fairly funky glitched minifigure torso. It's just completely wrong. One of the more inexplicable minifigure design choices though can be found in the Bad Batch attack shuttle, and while I explain it, go down and click that subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. This error was pointed out to me by a viewer named Russell and another viewer named Bulbasquirtle. Take a look at the box for this set. Every minifigure is holding something in their right hand, but there's an issue here for any fans of the show. Echo is known for, among other things, having only one hand, his left hand. His right hand is an astromech prosthesis, which can't actually hold anything. In fact, LEGO clearly knows this because they even gave this minifigure a light gray hand to show this off. It's a really small mistake, and one that was certainly done simply to make the images cleaner and more even, as LEGO likes to do. But it did rub a few people the wrong way because it breaks the rules. It's not possible. Now, this nostalgic LEGO Ninjago set has a big mistake. While most of the minifigure errors in today's video come from the instructions, this one actually comes on the box itself. A viewer named Harry spotted something a little off in the front of the packaging for set 9456, the Spinner Arena. Specifically though, which figures are included. We've got Kendo Kai, which is correct, but it says here that he's facing off against Slithra. Well, no, I don't think so. This is Slithra, with the large molded head in blue and yellow. The Serpentine minifigure depicted on this set box image is actually a Hypnobrai named Ratla. While this mistake may be really easy to overlook today, most people buying the Spinjitzu sets back in 2012 when this set was initially released were really big Ninjago fans, and so this mistake was quickly spotted. Moving on though from the realm of the ninja to the wizarding world, I've got two submissions from Guyman. Take a look at this image from the Hogwarts Astronomy Tower and you'll notice something's off about the way that Draco is holding his wand. In fact, he's not really holding it at all. It seems to be growing straight out of his wrist. That's definitely not how minifigures hold things. You see, as of 2020, most of LEGO's promotional set images aren't actual pictures. They're mostly renders nowadays. Gone are the days of photographers taking pictures for box art. Many of the images that you see on LEGO's website, on boxes, and in instruction booklets are all either CGI or CAD. This isn't a problem by itself, but it is the reason that we got some seemingly impossible situations like this one. But while we're on this set, take a look at this other mistake. If you've got the eyes of an eagle, or maybe owl, I guess, you could spot something that doesn't quite belong in this image. If you look real close towards the top, you'll notice that the graphic designer forgot to remove some of the Starry Night background from the box image, as you can see a part of the background through the window as opposed to white. However, an arguably much bigger error can be found in the Transfiguration class set from the Hogwarts Moments line submitted by Ethan. This 241-piece set comes with 3 minifigures, Ron, Hermione, and Professor McGonagall, except that it makes a pretty major omission at the end of the instructions. On the very last page of the booklet, where it shows the completed set, Hermione is just conspicuously absent. It seems like a major oversight, but I guess it kind of does fit into the lore of the stories. Maybe she's just time turning off to potions class, or maybe she's just trapped inside the book. It's a mystery. An even rarer type of mistake can be found in the 2020 Star Wars Character Encyclopedia when discussing the history of LEGO Stormtroopers. Before LEGO relied on CAD to generate product images, photographers would use these small LEGO plates as display stands to pose minifigures for set images. These would be edited out afterwards prior to releasing official images to the public. And well, it appears that someone forgot to edit out or remove one of these plates that this snowtrooper was standing on. While this is highly unusual, it's hardly unique. In fact, the 2017 line of LEGO Star Wars sets had quite the issue with this. I mean, just look at these product images. Look at what the minifigures are standing on. Most significantly though, it's important to realize that none of these sets actually include these plates. So in essence, these images were showing LEGO bricks that you wouldn't even get if you bought the set. Yikes. Up next, a viewer by the name of The Dark Hammer spotted a funny error on the back of the box for the Trade Federation Troop Carrier Gift with Purchase set. This 262-piece build came with 8 minifigures, including 2 of these pilot droids. If you look closely at the back of the box, you'll notice that the pilot droid left in the carrier doesn't have any legs and is just sort of floating there, defying physics. Now, you may wonder how this is possible, but you see, LEGO hasn't used real photos on its boxes for a very long time, as photorealistic 3D renders are faster and cheaper to produce. The only issue is that sometimes they can result in these physics-defying images. Now, many of you have submitted images of surprising mistakes found in LEGO instructions, such as a fan going by Bokoblin who found a mistake while building Captain Rex's Y-Wing microfighter. It all starts in step 4, when you're told to add a single transparent 1x2 plate. Fast forward a few pages to step 8, and the piece is suddenly missing. Fortunately, it quickly reappears on the next page. While a single piece briefly popping out of and back into existence might be enough to cause a quick head scratch, it's far from the worst offender. A viewer named Barry noticed something wrong in their mini Haunted Mansion set. On step 57 of this surprisingly detailed little build, you'll need to add 20 1x1 round studs on top of the 1x2 round plates. Those studs stick around for several more pages, until in step 76 they suddenly vanish. Much like with the Y-wing, these reappear in the very next step, but 20 pieces is an awful lot to leave out. I mean, at least all of these parts end up reappearing. Christian and Louis found a mistake while building the fire brigade that I've never encountered before. Near the end of the instruction booklet in step 31, you'll add a spoiler to the rear of the car. A few steps later, you'll add the 4 wheels, and the car is done. Or is it? On the next page, there's an instruction in a red box, which means that you'll be taking pieces off. This just highlights that the roof is designed to be removed, so you can easily add a minifigure. But there's something wrong here. The spoiler is gone. Normally, this could be seen as a simple oversight, and most builders would ignore it. But since this step is all about removing parts, it's especially confusing. The next page doesn't help either, because when showing off the final build, the spoiler is still missing. Where did it go? Well, the opposite problem was submitted by multiple fans, so shout out to Rocket Rooster, Hayden, Daniel, and Saeed. They all noticed the same mistake in the Ninjago Source Dragon of Motion set. In the 4th instruction booklet, between steps 513 and 514, you'll notice 3 elements mysteriously appear on the build. This is certainly enough to cause you to pause and double check to see if you missed a step, but a quick turn of the page shows that step 515 actually is the one that calls for these parts, so no big deal, but LEGO added them early for some reason. However, that's not necessarily the case with this next mistake submitted by Cameron. In the absolutely incredible Great Deku Tree set, there's a mistake that could cause some confusion. While working your way through bag 12 on step 171, you're told to fish out 2 1x2 green round plates. The issue is that at this point, there's only going to be 1 left in the bag. It's impossible to have 2 of them. Now, to be clear, the step only requires 1 of these parts, and the number is simply a misprint on the top left, but I can totally see someone panicking a little, thinking that they're missing a part. Over on Reddit, a user going by NotWorkingGhost posted an image of their instructions for the buildable cassette player. Surprisingly, the instructions for this set are not available on LEGO's website, since this set was only available for purchase with LEGO Insider points, so I can't check them myself, but many other people in the comments of this post confirmed that this is an accurate image. The step calls for 2 1x2 gray plates, but actually needs 3 of them. Luckily, all of the parts are in the bag. A different error was spotted on a different cassette by a fan going by FoundAround22, who spotted something a little off on the instruction booklet for the I Am Groot set. One of the cool little sub-builds of this set is Star-Lord's Awesome Mix Volume 2 tape, and the way it's put together here is just great. But the issue here isn't with the instructions themselves, instead there's something wrong on the cover of the booklet. Within the instructions, the top of the tape is very clearly black. However, the cover of the booklet shows it with a single 1x6 tile in what appears to be a grayish color. Another Redditor named Infect129 found something similar while building the office. Pages 84 and 85 both tell you to pick out a 4x4 brown tile. Both of these steps are all about placing stickers, but the issue comes when you try to finish step 89 and notice that the 4x4 brown tile just has not been used. After scouring the page looking for it, you might notice that it actually gets used in step 90, the next step. For some reason, LEGO calls for it a step early. A different sort of error was sent in by a fan going by Boomad. While building their Lamborghini Huracan Technica, they found a little more than they bargained for. Step 89 is a small sub-assembly that's nothing special on its own, but if you take a closer look, you'll notice something's a bit off. Steps 5 and 6 are identical, which is certainly a rare error to find in LEGO instructions. While a repeated step can be a little annoying, a skipped step can be even worse. Although it's incredibly rare, LEGO sometimes completely skips over a step in their instructions, and that's the case with the mistake spotted by Retro Unknown within the Daily Bugle set. On step 74, there's a small sub-assembly of a large TV with 4 steps. Well, maybe just 3 steps, because it seems that step 2 is completely missing. Luckily, it's fairly easy to figure out what to do based on the images around it and the parts being used, but it is a clear mistake in the instructions. In fact, this mistake has been corrected in the digital PDF version of the instructions on LEGO's website. For a slight change of pace, take a look at this step from the medieval town square as submitted by a fan named Andrew. Here, all of the steps are correct, and all the parts are properly listed too. So what's the problem? Well, check out the image in the upper left. That's supposed to show you what the finished product should look like. Now look at the steps, and you'll see that something's not quite right. The parts used do not build the reference image at all. This is clearly an oversight, as the same image is used elsewhere when building the roof, but it's seriously out of place here. Another bewildering mistake can be found in the Arctic Explorer ship, as found by a fan named Brandon. While working through this 815-piece build, you'll eventually open up bag 7 on page 90 in the 4th booklet. Well, cut to page 114, and you'll need to pour out bag 7 all over again. But wait, we already did that. To be clear, there's only one bag 7, and this is definitely an error. Much like the error in the Daily Bugle, this one has been updated on LEGO's website. And if you ever find a mistake in a set like Brandon did, email me a short description and a few pictures to videos@spitbrix.com for a chance to be featured in a future video. Now, perhaps the strangest mistake in today's video was submitted by a fan named Scott, who sent in this image from their copy of the instructions of this Star Wars set. On step 17 of the first book, you're told to grab 4 yellow steering wheels. If that sounds like an odd set of parts, you're right. It is. In fact, it's so weird that only 2 sets have ever used 4 yellow steering wheels: 2005's TTX double stack car and 2021's Cargo Connect Explore set from the Education line. But back to the point, the real issue here is, as you can probably tell from this image, that this step does not use any of these parts at all. Instead, you should use 4 2x4 black bricks. To make things even weirder though, these steering wheel parts don't even appear in the set at all and are completely absent from the set's inventory pages at the back of the instruction booklet. As of the time that I'm making this video, this mistake still has not been corrected on LEGO's website, but this is a pretty new set still, so I wouldn't be surprised if they correct it soon. Moving on, I'm sure that you enjoy the extra pieces that LEGO includes in sets. I sure do. But sometimes those spare parts can come at a cost. A Redditor named Onyx23 posted this image of their nearly completed typewriter set. On the plus side, they got a second backspace key for some reason, so that's super cool. But sadly, they were missing an O. This build has some of the most unique prints of any set out there, and honestly, it's kind of impressive that these sorts of mistakes aren't more common in this set. In fact, a similar problem was encountered by Draki5 while assembling their A-frame cabin. It seems that they weren't given any minifigure hair, but instead they were given this single black 1x8 tile. Somewhere out there, some set has a hairpiece instead of the needed tile, and a very confused builder, I bet. One of the more serious errors that I came across was posted by Fast5 over on Reddit. While putting together this LEGO Star Wars set, they eventually came to bag 4 and dumped out the pieces. The first thing you get to do here is assemble this brand new version of Han Solo. Well, there's something a little off about the version that this builder got. As you can see, this Han minifigure has a single white leg and a single brown leg, although both of them are supposed to be brown. This is a pretty wild manufacturing mix-up, and the kind that's pretty hard to fix on your own unless you have a different minifigure with plain brown legs floating around and you choose to perform some quick leg amputation surgery. Honestly, I wouldn't be too upset about getting a rare mistake like this, even if it's not necessarily a valuable error. But this is exactly what LEGO customer support is for. Hopefully they sent this builder a replacement piece. However, this is hardly the only minifigure mistake out there. A viewer named Mustafa sent in these images of their copy of the 2015 Snowplow truck set. If you look at the promotional images for this set, you'll notice that the truck driver is sporting one of the older minifigure ball caps with a long, flat bill. These pieces were officially retired in 2016, less than a year after this set was released, which might explain this little mix-up. When you dump out this set and open the instructions, you'll find one of these caps with a shorter, more rounded bill, which is the newer design. I guess that the product images here were just taken using the older part, and then LEGO decided to update this piece sometime between creating images and production of this set. But you see, it's not just LEGO pieces that can have an error, as pointed out by a fan named Diogo, who spotted something off in their Kai Fighter build from 2014. On the box, as well as in several official images, you'll notice that the villainous General Cryptor is holding a rather large shoulder-mounted gun that looks kind of like an old bazooka. Well, early on in the build, you'll put this minifigure together and something is very clearly off. The instructions very clearly tell you to build the weapon the other way around, making it look far too large for even the mighty general to wield. I remember wondering this exact thing whenever I built this set in 2014. It's a great set, by the way. But which way do you prefer? Let me know in the comments. Now, in very rare cases, the entire box can be a little bit off, as is the case with this submission from a viewer named BT. Over the years, I've seen a lot of LEGO boxes, and I've never seen one with this extreme of an error. The entire box was misprinted, resulting in every side being off-center and wrapping around the other side. It's genuinely surprising that LEGO let this one slip through its quality control stage, but it's a stroke of good luck for this builder. Misprinted boxes, especially unopened boxes in good condition, can fetch a decent price to the right collector. As extreme as that mistake is, the next entry from Reddit user SneakyStrategist221 is even wilder. This might be the most misprinted piece of LEGO merchandise that I've ever seen. It seems like this page somehow has a copy of the box art printed underneath the instructions. While this page's appearance is incredibly noisy and chaotic, the instructions themselves are still accurate, and this is the proper step to be followed here. What's especially crazy is that this wasn't just a one-off printing mistake. It seems like every copy of this set was shipped with these instructions. As of now, even the digital PDF instructions on LEGO's website show this same mistake, so it must have been a weird graphical mistake. Unfortunately for this builder, misprinted instructions aren't worth anything special, particularly when the mistake is this widespread. But even when everything is printed properly, accidents can still happen. This submission from Reddit user massively_invisible would be enough to give me a minor panic attack if I came across it. It seems that whenever they emptied out the contents of their copy of the Imperial Dropship vs. Rebel Scout Speeder set, they were greeted with a whopping 5 sticker sheets. For a set with only 383 pieces, that's more than a little excessive. Well, upon closer inspection, it turns out that this set was only supposed to include 1 sheet, and 4 of these were simply unnecessary duplicates. Whew, thank goodness, I definitely don't want to apply 5 sheets of stickers. Of course, the most common type of error in a LEGO set is some kind of misprinted instructions, and this next submission from Connor is an absolute goldmine. 2012's Forest Police Station is a fun enough little build with 633 parts and 5 minifigures, but it's the cover of the instructions that lands it a spot on today's list. To start, let's just take a quick look at the cover of the booklet. Okay, a few things to notice here. First of all, there's the police plaque front and center. Easy. Just behind that, there's a yellow rail element placed exactly 2 studs from the edge. And that's it. That's all that's supposed to be over here. Or is it? Once we open up the instructions and start building, things seem to get a little bit complicated. To start, the yellow rail that was specifically 2 studs from the edge has moved 1 stud over. A little odd, but hardly a game changer. But what about the police plaque? Well, it's moved to the opposite side of the building for some reason, but that's hardly the biggest change. A bit later on, you'll need to build an entire tree and place it out front. Of course, the cover of the booklet doesn't show this tree at all. Just compare it to the box art and to the official images, and you'll see just how much of a revision that this set seemed to go through during development. While these discrepancies can be a tad bit annoying, I always really enjoy seeing these little peeks into LEGO's design process. And if you also like learning about LEGO and its history, then be sure to subscribe to my channel. I put out a new video every Saturday, so click that notification bell so you don't miss it. Another set with multiple errors in the instructions was sent in by Drass, who spotted a handful of mistakes while building the Hogwarts Astronomy Tower. Some of these are easy to overlook, so let's go over them one at a time. The problems start before we even begin building. At the very beginning of the instructions, there's an overview of what each bag will contain. That's pretty normal, and there's nothing out of the ordinary at this stage. But take a look at bag 5. See that Draco Malfoy minifigure? Well, keep that in mind. Things progress pretty smoothly for the first 4 bags of steps until we get to page 92 and are told to reach for bag number 5. Remember how this was supposed to contain a Draco minifigure? Well, it looks like he must have gotten into the Polyjuice potion as he seemingly transformed into Luna Lovegood. Well, as we get to bag 6, we're still not done. This bag wasn't supposed to contain any minifigures, but we've finally found Mr. Malfoy hiding in the back of the class. But that's not all that's wrong here. If you check out the reference image for bag 6, you'll notice that the top is missing a spire. On their own, each of these is a pretty minor thing, but when they all pop up in a single set, they really start to add up and become noticeable. Moving on, a much smaller error was sent in by a fan named Josh, who found a funny little misprint while building 2024's wreath set. Alright, so the error that Josh sent in pertains to step 45, where you'll need to build 4 of these little sets of leaves and then attach them to the larger build. While this all goes off without a hitch, there's a very tiny mistake hidden in there. Just take a close look at this image and you'll notice that the leaves aren't actually connected to the ball joint. Obviously, this is just a rendering error as the pieces are very much supposed to click in, and I'll bet that 99% of people never notice this small mistake. But good eye, Josh. Another set with some vanishing parts was submitted by Hudson, who sent in a few images of the instructions from the Ski and Climbing Center. Overall, this is a really fun set with just over 1,000 pieces, and the mistake comes pretty late in the build. On step 346, you'll need to build this small subassembly and attach it to the larger climbing wall. There's nothing wrong here, but when you turn the page, you'll notice that the section you built has just disappeared. Don't worry though, it comes back right away, but it probably did shock a few builders. Next up, a mistake was brought to my attention by Destructor, who spotted something out of order in the instructions for their Shadow the Hedgehog bust set. On step 242, there's a small subassembly with 4 steps. Step 1 uses 2 parts, and step 2 adds 1 more, but steps 3 and 4 seem to be mixed up. Thankfully, this is a pretty easy to spot error, comes late in the build, and the page accurately shows all of the correct pieces. That last part might sound like a given, and all instructions should show the correct pieces, but I think you'd be surprised just how often LEGO instructions make a mistake when telling you which parts you'll need. Just take a look at the construction excavator set, which contains a mistake pointed out to me by Travis. In step 109, the instructions tell you to use 2 of these 1x4 plates with knobs. While these are used in this step, you'll notice that the instructions also show 2 1x1 round studs being added, but they're not listed in the required pieces at the top of the page. This is one of the more subtle mix-ups I've seen, and is exactly the kind of mistake that would probably catch a lot of builders off guard. A similar mistake was spotted by Grayson in the super fun Disney villain icon set. On step 337, you'll need to find a single inverted half bow and 1 hanging snot element. Well, a quick glance at the instructions makes it very clear that you'll actually need 2 of each of these. Luckily, they're all included in the bag. Next up, I've got a submission from longtime viewer Ashley, who found a simple mix-up in their copy of the Minions and Banana Car set. On step 22, the instructions call for a single 2x2 plate with axle and 1 of these large yellow cones. Once again though, you're going to need 2 of these to finish the set. A Reddit user named Foxman spotted something a little off when they were building their Eye of Sauron set. The last step of one of the bags calls for one of these hinge plates in black. Well, Foxman got something truly unique instead. This 2-tone hinge plate is something that I've never come across before, and is certainly a strange error by LEGO. It's actually quite cool. While these plates are made from 2 separate elements, they're assembled at the factory and aren't designed to be taken apart. What's even worse is that Sauron very specifically asked for only black bricks to be used. I'm worried for this builder. Another example of a mismatched part was spotted by Fergs when they were building the AT-ST Raider from 2019. During step 179, you're told to grab one of these double pin Technic pieces and insert 2 Technic pins that you may recognize as flickfire missiles. This isn't a very common connection, but it's one that LEGO uses occasionally. However, it caused major issues in this set. Many builders were left confused when they tried to put these parts together because they simply didn't fit. As you can see, the Technic pin is a bit too large for the hole. So what gives? Well, this set was released in 2019, and LEGO was making a few changes back then. The part that was supposed to be included in the bag was officially retired in 2020 and was being phased out of production with a new, slightly modified version taking its place at the time of production of this set. Starting in late 2019, LEGO introduced this new version, which is almost identical, but not quite. Looking at the 2 side by side, you can notice the different locations of the slits. That might not seem like a big difference, but it's just enough because the inside changed a bit too. These new parts have squared pinholes instead of round ones, meaning that the Technic pins used in this build simply won't fit. This is a big slip up by LEGO. It makes the set impossible to finish. Information on exactly how widespread this mistake was will probably never be fully revealed, but it seems like the early production batch of this set had the correct piece, while those produced in later months after the set's release included the new piece that no longer fits. Moving on, a fan named David sent in this image from their copy of the instructions for their McLaren set. While all the parts are in the right right place, there's an error in plain sight. It seems that the instructions designer at LEGO had a bit of a brain fart, because the instructions go from 3 to 4 and then straight back to 3. As of now, this hasn't been fixed on the LEGO website, which leads me to believe that every copy of these instructions has this same error. Next up, a viewer of the channel named Nathan sent in this image from their Up Brickheads build. While building Carl, they noticed something a little odd. Now, as it is, there's nothing wrong with this setup. The 2x2 corner plate fits perfectly, but it does seem like an odd choice. Why not just use a standard 2x2 plate? Well, if you look at the actual instructions, you'll see that you're supposed to be using a normal plate. Even the set's official inventory shows that only a normal 2x2 plate should have been included. Instead, it was somehow swapped for this corner plate. A LEGO set having the wrong piece is very rare, but still must be quite annoying. Now, another mistake from a Brickhead set can be spotted in this image posted on Reddit by a user named Educational Home. This is from the Gandalf Brickhead set and contains a subtle mistake. This step calls for 2 of these black snot bricks, but the build actually requires 3. Luckily, all of the right pieces are in the bag and it shouldn't cause too much confusion. Regardless, it has already been corrected in the online instructions for this set. Now, overall, the vast majority of mistakes found in LEGO instructions are misprints, and that's the case with this submission from a fan named Ashley who was left a little bit confused while building the abandoned mine. On step 14, you'll need to dig around for a 2 brick tall 2x1 element and a 3 brick tall 2x2 piece. While both of these pieces do get used, the same step also requires a standard 2x1 brick, which isn't mentioned in the step but is included in the set. Another error was spotted in the instructions for the Frozen Peaks set. On the very last page, we can see the completed model and everything seems to be perfectly fine. Well, if you look closely at Steve, you'll notice something a little odd about how he's holding his pickaxe. It seems like the instructions illustrator made a small mistake placing this piece, as it's clearly clipping through Steve's hand. These kinds of instruction rendering mistakes are harmless, but certainly worth pointing out, because some of them can be quite amusing. I can't imagine it feels good for Steve to have this pickaxe ripping through his hand, so hopefully he can get to the hospital quickly. But yet, it doesn't stop there, because an error from a different Minecraft set was spotted by a fan named Benjamin, who was left in the dark while building the Fox Lodge. In step 15, we need to place the torch next to some flowers. Nothing too wild. Well, fast forward to step 21 though, and that torch, as well as the flowers, are magically gone. What happened to them? Well, don't worry, because on the very next page, they're magically right back where they should be. However, this is hardly the only LEGO piece to pull a vanishing act in an instruction booklet. As pointed out by a fan named Adam, one part in the Space Science Lab seems to take an extended spacewalk midway through construction. In the second instruction booklet on step 11, you'll need to add a single white 1x4 plate on the top of this window element. Well, come step 12 and the piece is no longer there. By step 14, still nothing. Same for steps 15 and 16. This piece just doesn't come back until step 17, 6 pages later. This is quite a weird error. Next up, a fan named Joe sent in a similar problem with the instructions from 2008's telescopic handler. In step 4 of the first book, we get this small sub-assembly with a handful of parts. Nothing too complicated. Well, when the assembly is added to the main build, something changes. This small yellow Technic connector used in step 3 of the sub-assembly vanishes as soon as it's attached to the main build. Luckily, this one also pops back up in the very next step. Sometimes though, there's the opposite problem, where bricks just appear mysteriously out of nowhere. That's the case with this submission from Dawn, who found something a little out of place in the Back to the Future Time Machine set. Let's start on step 72, where we can see a largely completed assembly. Take a close look at the bottom right, and you'll see the section being added. Cut to the next page, and we're told to remove 2 yellow bricks, but let's go to that same bottom right corner. What's that? It seems like a red brick has appeared out of nowhere. Well, turning to the next page shows a short step calling for a single red brick to be placed. It's an incredibly small mix-up, but it might be just enough to leave someone scratching their head. Regardless, I was sent another interesting mistake from a viewer named Finn, who spotted something odd in their instructions for the Batcave, the Riddler face-off. On page 13, step number 7, you're told to grab 4 of something. I've never seen a LEGO part quite like that, and if this were a more complicated step, it could be a problem, but luckily the picture makes things pretty clear, and what you need are 4 of these minifigure telescope pieces. What's even more interesting though, and also adds some more confusion, is that the same mistake is repeated in the set's official inventory page at the back of the instruction booklet. It's as if part of this piece is invisible. Now, a different kind of mistake was spotted in the instructions from the super fun burger truck set by a Redditor named Few Obligation. And as I show you, go tap that subscribe button if you're enjoying these LEGO mistakes. Alright, so just by looking at one of these images, it's impossible to spot the error. But when you you view them side by side, you can see that the colors are slightly off. Specifically, the brown shades all seem slightly lighter than normal in the first image. This can happen sometimes and is just the printer at LEGO HQ running a bit low on ink. If you check the digital instructions on LEGO's website for this specific set, all the colors are perfectly balanced. Now, back in 2006, LEGO released the Build-A-Bob set, allowing you to build your very own SpongeBob. This is a fun build with 445 pieces and strangely no minifigures. The issue with this set though was sent in by a Redditor going by Entire Health and shows these pictures of the instructions. If you built a lot of LEGO sets in the 1990s and early 2000s, then there's nothing odd here at all. But there's been a pretty big change in LEGO design over the past 20 years that made this set stand out for a few newer builders. Nowadays, LEGO has a rule that any sticker must fit on a single piece to help make sure that taking apart a set doesn't ruin the stickers. Well, that wasn't always the case though, as shown in these images. These large stickers were called stamps, which stands for stickers across multiple pieces, and they used to be fairly standard. You can see one used in this instruction step for the 1995 promotional Maersk container lorry set, and here's another big sticker displaying a large Octan logo, which was used in the Indy Transport set released in 1996. But you see, not every LEGO mistake comes from the instruction booklet. A viewer calling themselves Potato Cow sent in this image of their Aston Martin DB5, and it caught my eye. This 298-piece set from the Speed Champions line comes with 2 bags, and they should be numbered. However, this bag seems to be missing it. Luckily, bag 2 was properly numbered, and even if it weren't, this wouldn't be a huge deal since this set is quite small. But imagine if this had happened in a massive set like the Eiffel Tower with over 70 bags. Yeah, things could get messy pretty fast. Now, one of the weirdest mistakes that I've seen was sent in by a fan named Isaac, who sent in this official promotional image of the UCS Millennium Falcon. This image was actually directly taken from the LEGO website, and as of writing this video, it's still up. Why is that a problem? Well, look closely at the front of the cockpit in this image. Now look at the front of the cockpit from the completed build. Do you notice anything missing? Yeah, this official promotional image, one of the company's most famous and expensive sets, uploaded by LEGO to their own website, is missing this printed dish piece. It's admittedly a small error for a set with more than 7,000 pieces, but it's such an iconic part of the ship that it's really hard to imagine LEGO messing this one up. User BagginsBrix discovered that in the LEGO Mandalorian Fang Fighter vs. TIE Interceptor set, there's a mistake that may even confuse seasoned builders. Upon opening this box, you'll notice 2 instruction booklets, one for each of the 2 ships, and 8 bags of pieces. The Fang Fighter uses bags 1, 2, and 3, while the TIE Interceptor calls for bags 4 through 7. So what is bag 8 used for? Even the opening pages of the instructions show that the build will be completed with bag 7, so is bag 8 useless? Well, towards the end of the build, we get our answer. On page 92 of the booklet, you're told to dump out bag 8 to make the last 2 wing panels. I guess LEGO just forgot to mention it beforehand, but the strange thing is that even the digital instructions on LEGO.com haven't corrected this mistake yet. Now, the mistake in this Poe Dameron construction figure set seems to defy physics. On the very last page of the instructions, all that's left to do is place the head. Easy stuff. However, there's one small error that could cause a bit of confusion. If you look just underneath his arm next to the blaster, you'll see a small red Technic pin sticking out of nowhere. How does this pin defy gravity? Well, the previous step asks you to use this pin to attach the blaster to Poe's hand, but this piece seems to have slid out of place when LEGO rendered the final image. However, that's not the only mistake that pops up in one of Poe's sets. A fan named Dida pointed out something odd in Poe Dameron's X-Wing fighter. Check it out. On page 99 of the instructions, we're given this small assembly, but if you look a little closer, you'll notice that something's not quite right. Step 1 shows 2 pieces, and Step 2 only shows 1 part. Clearly, these are just printed out of order. A minor issue, but one that's particularly funny when you realize that the same set actually has this same assembly one more time, and it shows the proper sequence. Now, the Alpine Lodge is one of my favorite sets from the last year, so I was actually pretty surprised when a fan named BikerCat Gaming sent me an email exposing an error in the instructions. On step 106, we're told to find this window piece with a rounded opening, but the images in the instructions show a more classic window piece with a rectangular opening. To make things even more confusing, the official parts inventory for the set shows the rounded piece, but all the images show the rectangular one. At the end of the day, it doesn't affect the build and is barely noticeable, but it is certainly some kind of piece mistake. However, one of the weirdest mistakes that I've come across was submitted by a viewer named Matthijs, who got something unexpected in their Back to the Future set. When opening up bag 8, they spotted a piece that certainly didn't seem to belong, this cute 1x1 round printed B tile. Confused, they checked the parts inventory page of the instructions, and sure enough, this part does not belong in this set. This piece has only popped up in about a dozen builds over the last few years, and most of them are LEGO Friends or Harry Potter sets. How it got into this set is certainly a mystery. But on the topic of things that don't quite belong, there's something a little off in the Ravenclaw house banner set that caught the eye of a fan named Thomas. The first part of the second bag here tells you to build 2 small chairs, and on a side note, I absolutely love the design of these. But the weird part comes on the very next page, where one of these uncompleted chairs can be seen just kind of floating there. The funny thing is that the position of the chair on this page is the exact same position it had on the previous page, showing that this was very clearly just a copy-paste error when LEGO was designing these instructions. And speaking of copy-paste errors, another one can be found in the gift box promo set from 2019. A viewer named Tommy pointed out step 22 here, which says that you need 8 2x2 red tiles, but the image clearly shows only 4 being used. How did this error happen? Well, the previous step actually required 8 2x2 green tiles. This is a small error for sure, but one that would likely leave a few people a bit confused. Now, while many of these errors show additional or misplaced pieces, sometimes LEGO pieces pull a vanishing act. Just take a look at the LEGO City Freight Train. In Book 5 at Step 37, we can clearly see these black clips holding the car together. But on the very next page, poof, they're mysteriously gone, only to reappear later in the instructions. The instructions never say to remove them, so this mistake likely flew under the radar of most builders. But there's a set that takes this little trick to the next level. As pointed out by a viewer named Areg, the LEGO Mindstorms Robot Inventor Kit has a set of steps that really raises a few questions. In Step 10, we're told to add 4 black Technic pins to a frame, which is easy enough. Step 11 then calls for 2 more Technic beams. So far so good. But Step 12 starts to get a little weird. As you can see, 2 of the originally placed pins are seemingly gone from this step. Well, don't freak out just yet, because by Step 13 they seem to be back to their proper place. Magic. Sometimes though, LEGO instructions can get a little ahead of themselves, and that seems to be what happened in the Fast and Furious Dodge Charger set. Let me show you, but first, go tap that subscribe button. It's the best way to support my videos, and it's completely free. As pointed out by a fan named Alex, there's one section where LEGO seem to be a bit too eager in this set. Step 96 adds 3 pieces to make the top of the engine block, and when placed on the build, this section should stand straight up at this point. But it's shown already folded over here. This isn't that odd by itself, but the very next step, Step 97, contains no bricks and just tells you to fold down the parts. However, what might be the weirdest mistake in this video comes from a fan who goes by Inkwell, who found something off about the box art for the Mighty Dinosaurs 3-in-1 Creator set. If you look at the box art and promotional images of this set, you'll notice the dark bluish-gray arm and leg extender that was commonly used in the old Hero Factory line. Well, it seems that at some point during the last few years, LEGO has retired this piece entirely. Sets that used it were slightly redesigned, and you can see from the instructions that this T-Rex build no longer features this piece, as it's conspicuously absent from the set's inventory. So why is it still on the box art? Well, good question. It was probably deemed to be too expensive or possibly just unnecessary to fix at this point. Next up is a very peculiar mistake submitted by Martin, which can be found in the Ninjago Imperium Dragon Hunter Hound set. Step 5 calls for this gray wheel bearing piece, but there's something odd about it. I've got several of these pieces floating around, and none of them have these strange holes surrounding the Technic cross. Sure enough, the piece in this set doesn't have them either, and the set's parts inventory shows that this piece doesn't have those extra markings. So is this a new version that hasn't been released yet, or just a strange, reoccurring graphical mistake? Well, the world may never know, and while I'm on the subject, another error in a different Ninjago set was reported by Otto, who spotted a few mistakes on the box art of Lloyd's Golden Ultra Dragon. For starters, the box art clearly shows Oni Lloyd with unprinted legs. However, the included minifigure very clearly has printed legs. Additionally, 2 of the Vengestone warriors are shown on the box with these crystal shoulder pieces. However, sadly, none of these pieces appear in the set itself. These errors have been fixed on the LEGO website, but many boxes out there have not, and it would be pretty disappointing to not get the pieces that are advertised on the box. Yet another Ninjago mistake can be found in the Crystal King set. Check out this page of the instructions, which shows that Bag 7 builds the Crystal King but forgets to add his mask. However, it's not just Ninjago that seems to have a few issues with minifigures. A viewer going by Mr. Mime Machine sent me 2 mistakes that he found in the Sonic the Hedgehog sets. Both Tails and Dr. Eggman have some issues with color consistency. During the assembly of the Tails minifigure, there's something off about his trademark Tails. In the first 2 steps, the tails are white on top, but by the 3rd step, the colors seem to have inverted. Now, a different error pops up with the Dr. Eggman figure. In the instructions, the spots where the arms connect to the torso are a light nougat color, while the actual piece is red on the inside. It shows the same color as his head inside his arm, which is certainly a little weird. But yet another miscolored minifigure can be found in the digital instructions for the Disney Celebration train set. In Bag 5, you get to put together Minnie Mouse, and the first step shows her with the proper printed skirt that matches her torso, but on subsequent steps, this print seems to be removed, leaving it pure white. Now, this seems to only be an issue with the mobile digital instructions, as the PDF version on LEGO's website and paper version shows the correct pattern in every step. But a different kind of minifigure related problem seems to be going around with the Harry Potter 2023 Advent Calendar. Several users over on Reddit reported getting multiple copies of the same minifigure on different days. Some got 2 Hermiones, some got 2 Rons. While this would be incredibly frustrating, LEGO's customer support is generally fast and helpful with these issues, and most people reported getting a replacement figure in no time, and they even got to keep the extra for free. But that's not all, because a fan named Jordan noticed a very rare error in his classic Batmobile set at the back of its instructions. This is where all the pieces of the set are listed, and LEGO's printer must have been miscalibrated because the pieces look like they've all been double printed, resulting in a very trippy effect on this page. A viewer named Sean found a mistake in the buildable cassette player promotional set. In step 18, you're told to pick out 2 gray 1x2 plates, but when we take a look at step 3 of the sub-assembly, we can clearly see the need for 3 of these pieces rather than just 2. This is certainly a LEGO instructions error, but they get a lot crazier than this. The opposite mistake comes from James, who spotted an error in the ice cream truck police chase instructions. In the first booklet on step 8, the instructions call for a single 2x2 white plate. Easy enough. The problem is that this step doesn't place it anywhere. Does it go on the top or bottom? Well, luckily moving on to step 9, the piece does appear, but now it's hidden underneath the new parts from this new step, making it a bit difficult to see. Something somewhat similar snuck its way into this LEGO Star Wars set from earlier this year. At step 116, you're told to gather 2 1x1 short bricks, but this step actually only needs 1, which could be a bit annoying if you spend that time looking for 2 of the pieces only to need 1 in the end. Thanks to one of my viewers named Josh for pointing this one out to me. Sometimes though, all the pieces are completely right, but the steps are in the wrong order. That's the case with this submission from Herman, who found something off in the dump truck set from 2009. In step 24, you might notice these 2 black 1x1 brown studs that have appeared on the hood. These seem to come out of nowhere, but step 25 tells us to place them here. Most of the time, these types of mistakes are overlooked since many builders just concentrate on the pieces that the instructions list at the top of each step, but this is a visual mistake nonetheless. Now, while the sudden appearance of an unexpected piece can often go unnoticed, the disappearance of pieces that you've already placed is almost certain to raise a few eyebrows. That's exactly what happened in the instructions for the telescopic handler Technic build from 2008. A viewer named Joe sent in this shot of step 4 from the first instruction booklet. The last step of the little side build very clearly shows you attaching this yellow Technic connector. Even the parts count at the top of the page shows it. However, when we're told to place this assembly onto the main build, this connector is conspicuously absent. Now, this piece does reappear in the very next step, but it's still enough to potentially cause a brief headache. Now, this sort of thing happens more often than you'd think, as another fan named Samuel pointed out another error. In the police bike car chase set, step 6 calls for a single red 2x4 plate to be added onto the back of the car. So far, so good. But just a few pages later, on step 14, this piece mysteriously vanishes before popping back into existence in the very next step. Thankfully, most LEGO sets don't require the removal of pieces, and when they do, there's a big red box around the instruction page, so this error is unlikely to cause anyone too much trouble. Either way though, it's enough to make you stop and say, wait, what? Next up, one strange example of an instructions error was sent in by Travis, who got a bit confused while building the Lamborghini Huracan Technica. Step 89 of this build is a subassembly with 6 steps, but one of these doesn't belong. Take a close look at steps 5 and 6. See the difference? No? Well, that's because there isn't any. These 2 steps show identical builds, and as it turns out, the last step is completely unnecessary. So it looks like LEGO has moved beyond just giving us extra duplicate parts, because now we're getting extra duplicate instruction steps. Weird. But even with all of these mistakes, the parts that are missing or extra are at least ones that are found in the set. But a viewer going by Blue2YT sent in a few images that really caught my attention. In the instructions for Nia's Samurai X mech on page 13, we're told to look for a blue sloped 2x2 brick. While that's not unusual by itself, the fact is that this part does not even come in this set. No matter how hard you look and no matter how many other bags you open, you'll never find it. Of course, you may be wondering, well, how is this possible? Well, this set does contain this kind of brick, but only in purple, as you can see here. And this one isn't a one-time mistake either, as this same piece is shown as being blue in later steps as well. Now, it's worth pointing out that this error has been fixed in the digital instructions on the LEGO website, but that doesn't help anyone with a paper copy. There's always a chance that this was just an error with the ink during printing, but that seems far-fetched. Do you have this set? If so, what color is the brick in your instructions? Let me know down below in the comments. While these are all innocent mistakes, sometimes LEGO instructions just straight up lie to you. That's the case with this step from the absolutely gorgeous insect collection set. The step itself is quite simple, but if you look a little bit closer, you'll notice something very odd. The 2 small assemblies are actually switched. The parts are put together correctly, but they're placed in the wrong locations. This led many users over on Reddit to argue about which way is the right way. At the end of the day though, that's the great thing about LEGO. The quote-unquote right way is whichever way you like it. Moving on, a different kind of instruction error pops up in the Batcave break-in set. Take a look at the inventory page of these instructions and you'll see that this package includes 1 copy of this part. This piece is unique to this set and features a classic style Batman with purple boxing gloves. But that's not what's shown here. This torso has a completely different print on it. I believe this is a rare rendering glitch that occurred while developing these instructions, because as it stands, this mistake has not been fixed and can still be found in the digital instructions on LEGO's website, so it's unlikely to change anytime soon. While these kind of minor print misprints aren't a huge deal, some mistakes can actually make a set impossible to complete. That's the case with set number 75947, Hagrid's Hut, Buckbeak's Rescue, where LEGO actually released a product that simply cannot be completed with the parts in the box. A viewer named Robert sent in this image of the instructions, which show that the 2x4 plate with axles should fit snugly in place. However, Robert quickly discovered that there was something wrong. As you can see, these parts do not fit tightly together, preventing the assembly from snapping into place and making the rest of the build all but impossible. And Robert wasn't alone. There are several posts on Reddit about exactly the same issue. Well, Robert was determined not to be beaten by a plastic brick, so he tracked down a similar piece from his own collection and managed to make it fit. So what's the problem? How on earth did LEGO put out a set that couldn't be assembled? Well, it's a little complicated, but here's the gist of it. The set's official inventory states that the package includes 1 copy of this part, but it actually comes with a copy of this part instead. While these 2 parts might look the same from the top, there's a small but extremely important difference. Officially, these pieces are both known as modified 2x4 plates with pins, but they aren't the same. The one that is supposed to come in the set has thin supports, but the one that we actually get here has thick supports. What does that mean? Well, if we take a look at the bottom of the pieces side by side, we can see the problem. These thicker supports simply don't allow for pieces underneath to be attached cleanly, making the build impossible as packaged. Luckily, LEGO customer service is pretty good about sending out replacement parts, but this mistake likely affected thousands of sets, which is crazy to think about. But what isn't crazy is tapping that subscribe button to support my channel if you're enjoying this video. Now, even if the box comes with all the right pieces, you might not know how many of them to use. Just check out these instructions from the City Square. On page 3 of the 8th instruction booklet, you're told that you'll need bag 12 plus 7 of the these curved window pieces to build the first part of the tram. 7 seems like a bit of an odd number, but sure, let's do it. On step 28, we use 4 of them, which is no big deal, but you might already see where this is going. A few pages later on step 31, we're told that we need another 4 of them. That's a total of 8 for those doing the math at home, and that's not even the worst of it. Several pages later, on page 73, we're told that we need bag 14 and another 4 of these pieces to build the last part of the tram, and you also might see where this is going. Yup, it turns out that we actually need 8 of these pieces once again, not 4. Luckily, all of these elements are included in the box, but the fact that the instruction designer got this wrong twice is pretty wild. What's worse is that these instructions were never fixed for the digital version. This seems like an obvious error to spot, but oh well. However, not every instruction error is a simple misprint. Sometimes things get a little bit more extreme, and that was the case with a user on Reddit who found something a bit disorienting with the instructions for their Concorde jet set. A couple hundred steps into the build, one Reddit user suddenly found themselves getting a little dizzy when the instructions suddenly flipped upside down for no apparent reason. It seems like this was just a single page, but that makes it even weirder in my opinion. Like, how does just one page out of nearly 200 get reversed? It's a mystery. Now, a smaller but just as funny mistake popped up in the instructions for the Black Widow and Captain America motorcycles. A Reddit user posted this image of their instruction booklet, and people were a little shocked when they spotted the error. This book seems to skip from page 6 directly to page 13, while also completely missing steps 1 through 8. The booklet doesn't seem to be damaged, so it's just an extreme printing error. For small sets like this, it's not a huge deal to figure out the missing steps, but I can't imagine the nightmare if this had popped up in a very large Technic set or likewise. Moving on, even LEGO's official artwork isn't immune from misprints, it seems. A fan named Brent sent in this image from the instructions from the Dreams crocodile car. As you can clearly see from this image, something is not right. If you didn't know, the instructions from the Dreams theme each tell a small story and contain some really cool art of the set, and that's where this mistake comes in. On page 25, there's a nice drawing showing off the car that you're about to build, but the mistake stands out like a sore thumb. 2 of the wheels just aren't in the right place. Now, this might not be a mistake, as it could just be intentional to show that the minifigure is using its powers to build this car from spare parts, but everything else is in the correct spot, so it seems strange to just leave the 2 tires out of place. Do you think this is an error or an intentional design choice? Now, yet another error was spotted by a viewer named Seppi, who spotted something unusual in the promotional images for the Walt Disney tribute camera. As you can see from the official artwork, the roll of film seems to be attached to the outside of the camera. It's a little wonky and certainly stands out in an otherwise well-designed set. Well, if you look at the actual instructions though, you see something different. When built, the film comes out of the back of the camera, giving a much cleaner final look. But you see, there are many more LEGO sets that break the rules. Click here right now to watch more episodes in this series, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more LEGO videos.